Welcome to What People Miss. Here, I invite you to the conversations about the subtleties in which life is truly lived. As Mozart said, the music is not in the notes, but in the silence between them. Hi, I'm your host, Cordelia Gaffar, the ultimate joy goddess, inviting you to choose joy and pleasure so that you love your life. I do that with my 13-week experience called Let's Play with Intimacy. You'll be in the noticing of who you truly are and all the way to your core. The next cohort begins April 7th, and you may email me at hello@cordeliagaffar.com for details, and that's below. You'll also see a ticker running below this video if you're watching on YouTube. And that is my new website, Let's Play. And so I invite you to go there if you would like to stay in touch with me and learn more about the ways that I work with women. I also do annual retreats in Bali and a collaboration effort with a relationship coach who runs the Love Camp. So today I'm so excited to bring you episode 4 of What People Miss. This is my new podcast. As you know, I'm an award-winning podcast host, and my previous podcast is called The Free to Be Show. But I decided to start this one because I want to talk about all the things that we miss. So I've had this morning, we've had an adjustment to the roster, and my guest, is a mom like me. And sometimes our children need us more than we need to work. And I love that that happened for us today. So we get to understand what we miss about the importance of being a mom. And I still want to have this beautiful conversation around maternal health. However, our guest, Christiana T. Johnson, will be back here next week. I will be doing, for President's Day, I will be doing a brilliance marathon with brilliant Black women, and she will kick it off first. And I get to have one of the other wonderful, brilliant women in my network, and we will be having this conversation today about maternal health. So, for those of you who may not know, Lisa N. Alexander is the founder of This Woman Knows, and she has been with me, I think, or I've been in her brilliant zone since I started my business about 10 years ago. And I am so grateful to her for her platform and how she continues to support me. And with no further ado, I bring to the stage. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning. How are you, Cordelia? Good morning. Good morning.
I am grateful and always winning.
I
How are
just love
you?
how you are always provided for. You are always provided for. So, good morning.
Thank you. Yes, I am. We are all always provided for. That's the thing that we
Absolutely.
miss.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, I want to talk about the joys of maternal health, right? It's not all gloom
Mm,
and doom.
mm.
I know that when I first advertised this episode, I talked about baby loss and miscarriage, which I've suffered miscarriage, but not baby loss. Um, what is it that we miss about maternal health in this country, specifically when it comes to Black women?
So, I will say this first. I am not the expert in the field. I have had the pleasure of working for clients who are expert in the field. So some knowledge just kind of like rubbed off because I had to do all the work and was in on the conferences. So while I am not an expert, what I understand about Black maternal health in the United States is that there is this underlying bias still of Black women and our bodies, and just the assumptions that happen continuously about what it is that we can withstand. So one of the biggest things is the pain issue, and, "Oh, she really doesn't need the pain medication, she'll be alright," and just being disregarded. So one of my, it's not a good thing, but it's a something that we can take reference to. So when Serena Williams was pregnant with her first baby, remember?
Yeah.
And Serena Williams is Serena Williams.
Yes.
She's Serena Williams, right? And for her to receive the treatment she did the first go around with her pregnancy, to be ignored, to be discounted, to be dismissed, and the doctors knew better, but she knew her body and ended up was absolutely correct in her assessment and what was wrong, but to be dismissed. And if that was Serena Williams, I don't have Serena Williams status. I'm not married to her husband of affluence, right? I'm going, where do the rest of us, how do we stand a chance? And so there has to be this continual education, and it has to be, so my client says it has to be Black women centered, because if you fix it for Black women, it automatically fixes it for every other woman. And so we
Wow.
have to go back to, it's this systemic thing where it's woven into the very fabric of everything in this country. And so it's a dismantling, if you will, or getting people to understand that it's not, it's systemic, even in its teaching in colleges, in med schools. You might remember a few years ago, it was all the buzz on the internet about finally having images, medical images of Black people. That was a big thing because it had never been done until this baby did it just a few years ago. And so it's a systemic issue that needs to be dealt with. And I think right now we are at the height of I think we are at a reckoning moment.
Yeah, you said a lot there, and you educated us, at the same time. I recognize that you're not the expert in this field, and thank you for being here last minute. Um, you bring up a really so many good points. I resonate in particular with what you said about pain. Um, I mostly had home births, but I had two in the hospital. And the first one I had in the hospital was um, apparently not as horrendous as the average. Um,
Okay.
but I, I, um, I did not want to have an what do you call it? What is it called?
Epidurals?
Right. I didn't want to have an epidural. However, I was induced. My labor was induced, right? And so it's more painful when you
Mhm.
induce labor because the body is being told what to do instead of you telling and instead of you allowing the body to just ripen, right? And so because of that, it was more painful than it should have been.
Mm.
And there was a disregard. And the thing that makes it for me that made it not like, I just didn't see it coming was that my doctor was a brown woman, you know what I mean?
Same, same, same. So I have my birth stories. I can share those because I've had two. So I gave birth to my daughter. I was in my 20s. So 21, 2, somewhere around there. So it's been a minute. It's been a while. And I remember, so as a Black woman, and it's very common for Black women to have fibroids, and so I had fibroids, and I remember having my daughter, going through that experience, and then having the doctor tell me that, your placenta almost detached. It's, it's detached." And that was it. There was no further explanation. I could have lost that pregnancy. I could have lost my daughter, but it was never explained to me what having the fibroid and being pregnant at the same time. So that happened. Then I get pregnant almost 8 years later. The fibroid is still there, and my doctor is a Black woman. Not even she is a Black woman. And I go into labor, or we had to induce labor because my water broke. And again, I hear it's like, your placenta almost detached again. And no one ever explained to me about getting pregnant and having fibroids the size that I had, and how this had put me at risk and put my babies at risk. I did not understand what a miracle my children were until I sat in one of the conferences of my client, and it all started to come together, and I'm going, "Oh," but nobody bothered to tell me, not the white doctor I had in my 20s, and not the sister, not the Black doctor that I had when I delivered my son. So it is a miracle that these 2 babies are here, because they were fighting in a womb that had this huge fibroid that no one ever addressed. So it was years of the heavy periods. It was years of the low sex drive. It was years of just very painful period. Nobody said anything. I go to the doctor. It's like, this is what's going on. Ah, it's just a fibroid.
Wow. So for our viewers and listeners, can you explain, I feel like you gave a little bit of an explanation of what fibroids do in the womb space, but if you could just give a little bit more education.
So for fibroids, they're growths, and they can appear anywhere, from what I understand, in the female area. So in your womb, in your uterus. I think I've heard. Okay, I'm not going to say what I'm not know for sure. I do know they were in my uterus, in my womb area, and so they were sharing space, and they got really big. Um, they can be removed. Usually, they talk about, since I'm a woman of a certain age, um, fibroid care has gotten much better since I was a woman in my 20s. And so I think one of the reasons I really didn't push further is because they were going to talk about taking everything out. It would have been a complete hysterectomy for me in my 20s if I had to deal with fibroids. If we were going to deal with fibroids, there wasn't, that was your only option. So thankfully, things are so much different now, and women have so many more options as to care for their womb and their fibroids, where you can still have children later if you so choose, right? So they're growths. They can, most of the time they're benign from what I believe, but they can get to be very, very large, and they cause very painful periods and lots of blood loss. You'll find that a lot of Black women in particular who have fibroids are usually very low in iron as well, because of the heavy blood loss from month to month. And if we're not eating iron filled diets, then it's a deficit on the body, and then that causes a whole different set of issues as well. So
Yeah, thank you for that. And so if you are having any of those symptoms, I don't profess to be that kind of practitioner. I encourage you to see your doctor and
absolutely.
find out what care is available for you. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
So, there are people here, oh, low energy too. There are people here. I don't see the names. It's just showing up as LinkedIn user. I'm going to share some of the comments. Hello, thank you for being here with us today on What People Miss. Um, She says, or I'm assuming it's a she. Look at that. It could be a he, right? It
True.
could be. Hello, Cordelia. Thank you for being so graceful about today. I'm forever grateful. Oh, you know what? Oh, for you and your grace. In my case, I'm showing up as a lady. Okay. I think this may be Christiana.
Mm,
Yeah. Um, that's awful that you were not told, and absolutely it was a miracle. Thank God you are alive to tell your
yeah.
story. Yeah. So,
Yeah. Yeah, they do.
it's my understanding that fibroids are something that are born out of trauma. Like they're like literal manifestations of things that have happened to you that just
Mm, I can see that dis-ease in the
Mhm.
body. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I could definitely see that. Um, a lot of estrogen in the body, and so if there's anyone who can validate what I've been told, and so I've been a woman who struggled with weight, especially around my belly, my midsection, my entire life, right? So, and now not in baby making years, we're in the baby manufacturing shutting down of the plant kind of phase of life right now.
Right.
And so the belly fat is prominent. It's no game on this side. Really, it's really no game. But that's where a lot of the estrogen, right, extra estrogen sits in that spot. And so with estrogen, it just feed the fibroids feed on the estrogen. So that the trauma, the extra weight, and a lot of us care, especially stateside Americans. We carry a lot of extra weight, a lot of extra stress. So
Yeah.
absolutely, I believe that. I believe stress does manifest in the body.
And
It
so
will Your body will let you know.
it does. Yeah, your body speaks to you. And I say, like,
Mhm.
we have awesome technology in our body too, right? It's not just like, woe is me, I have it's talking to us all the time. And
Right.
that's part of, like, when I say what people miss, it's like when you're not listening to your body, when's the last time you had a headache? And how did you treat it? Did you drink a cup of water?
Mhm.
Or did you get a painkiller immediately? Like, there's so many things that could be happening. You have a headache because you're not getting enough oxygen. You have
Mhm.
a headache because you're dehydrated. You have a headache because you're hungry. You have a headache because you're stressed, you know?
You have a headache because you're constipated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we don't check in with our bodies and stop and,
Mm.
body, what do you require right now?
Mhm. Very true. Yesterday was such a luxurious day, and I don't get to have them often. So I took care of my responsibilities early in the morning, did some grocery shopping, cooked a little bit. But the rest of the day, I did exactly what my body asked me to do. It was take a nap, it was casually read on the sofa. I sunned myself like a cat, sat on my sofa and read and fell asleep, got up, did something else, maybe ate, and then the body said, "We want to go lay back down on the sofa." I said, "Okay, body, we're going to go lay back down on the sofa." Fell back asleep, um, woke back up, and it's like, "We'd like to go for a bike ride now." "Okay, we'll go for a bike ride around the corner. We'll do that." And it is rare that I get to have those kinds of days where it is purely me listening and doing what's being asked of me. Those are such luxurious moments. I don't I'll say that, throughout my day, my regular work week, I take my time with, it early in the morning, is my time for myself to check in, try to honor myself, my body. Not try, I do honor myself, honor my body first thing in the morning and have my morning routine, my morning ritual. And but to spend a full day yesterday was absolutely went to bed, didn't care about the game that was on after I watched the halftime show, of course. Um, I showered and got in the bed and laid down, and it was a good day. And we need to honor ourselves and listen because our body speaks to us and tells it what she or he needs, what they need, and it's up to us to listen.
It really is, and it is a she and he thing, right? So I'm going to try and stay a little bit on topic too, right? As it pertains to maternal health, because, you are having sex with your partner, right? And both of you have to be healthy in order for the
Right,
baby, right, to
right.
be healthy. And you have to create a healthy environment internally and externally between yourselves,
Mhm.
in preparation. And so everything that you're saying doesn't just apply to women, right?
Right.
It applies to the man too, because you don't want, your partner to be stressed out either. You want
Mm,
him to be in the listening and noticing of his body.
absolutely. So I will say this about my husband, and as women, sometimes we can, okay, so here's what had happened. We we are nurturers. Some of us, I cannot say all. I will not generalize women in the sense to say that we are all nurturers because we all are not nurturers. That is not true for all of us. But a good number of us are nurturers, and we find ourselves busy and being about the house, taking care of everything. And I noticed, so my husband and I, we both work 9 to 5s, and I noticed that on the weekends, he really didn't do much. Like, he would spend maybe, like, Saturday, he would, take care of our cars and things of that nature, but Sundays, he didn't it you would be hard pressed to get him to come from upstairs from his man cave, and part of me actually resented that for a moment, and it's like, I still have to do this, and I'm doing this and doing all the other and doing all the things and taking care of this, and how come I don't get a day? And it's like, "You know what? Like, sis, you chose to do all the things. You could go sit down as well." And so sometimes I applaud my husband for taking care of himself. I was seeing it as, well, you need to he does contribute. Sundays are his day to, I need to replenish myself for the week ahead, for all the demands that are going to be made of me. This is my way of adding back to myself. And so our what may look like being lazy, and my husband is in no way lazy. S Again, everybody's house is different, but if your spouse or your partner is allowing for rest and you're running around like crazy, maybe that's a cue that you need to lean into that rest as well. Things will get done. The workplace proves it all the time. Stuff will get done. It's like, not let you show up, let something happen. Things will still get done. It's a matter of priority.
Yeah. That's I love that you shared that, Lisa, because you know, in many households that breeds resentment. Like my husband gets, and what if your husband is leading by example?
That part. And it took me a while to understand because it was resentment for many years. Trust, it was resentment for a lot of time. And me coming into myself and me listening and f finally coming into, I've gotta take care of me on a high, my self-care has to elevate. And so it's like he's been exemplifying self-care all these years, and I thought it was something else, and it was resentment, and it was not. Because if it's stressful being a Black woman, I can only imagine the stress of being a Black man in these United States. So
Yeah. Yeah. And that is such an opportunity for, reconnection with your spouse too,
It
right?
is.
Instead of
Absolutely.
berating him, right? It's like, "Hey, what you doing?" "I wanna do that." And,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Imma take a cue. You resting? Maybe I need to go sit down somewhere, maybe.
yeah. It's like, "Do I have to do the dishes?" Like, does it all do I have to dust everything today? You know? No. I'm gonna
No.
I'm gonna sit right next to you, you know?
And there was a study that's, and when it comes to sexuality and it comes to sex and the actual actives, men could care less if there are clothes on the bed. They could care less if dirty socks were around, if there were plates of food. They do not care. For women, we're going, I can't do this in this environment. And we've got to make sure it's clean. It's got to be, because we have this thing in our head. It's got what it has to be or what it's supposed to be. And I think we miss out. It's the moment. It's all about the moment and being present. And so what if there are clothes on the floor next?
I
It'll get
mean,
done. It'll get done.
sexually, just your body has to be clean, really, you know? As long as
Okay. Okay.
right?
No.
As long as your body's clean and, you have I don't know, enough space to do whatever it is you wanna do. It's
Okay. Okay. And remember, some of it, women, not me, but it's like when you were dating and the things we did in cars and all. It's so now all of a sudden you have to have pristine conditions.
no, you don't. I mean, it's probably better not to, like, if you wanna use food or anything like that, just
Well, true.
right? So
Okay, so now you're talking about play. Understood. Yes, we do
Yes.
want a clean environment if we're going to introduce food into our play. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's probably better not to clean first, you can clean later. Yeah. So, I mean,
Keep
anyway,
going through.
there'll be other fluids, coming out, hopefully.
Fingers crossed.
Right? Lisa, that's so true. Women think we need a clean space for intimacy. Right? We
And
don't.
it's a head thing. And again, for women, it's a head thing, for us to become who we are sexually. It's really a head game. It's a head game. It's a head game.
But, I would say the head game comes from, right, creating that communication and, connection outside of the bedroom. It's all like, instead of having resentment about your husband resting, rest with him, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, just if you think about that, your shoulders will drop immediately, right?
Mhm.
And that offers a new opportunity for play. It's like you don't have time to have sex or for intimacy because you're doing stuff. But what if you didn't do that stuff? You
Right.
know?
Right. And for me, when we talk about head games, so I've confessed that I've always struggled with my weight. And so, on the high side, I was knocking on 3. And so there's always been this up and down thing. So I have not always had the best relationship with my body. The insults I have heard, you didn't have to do it because I hurled the insults on my own body. And
Mm.
so for me to even think that I was a sexual creature took some it took some doing, that I was worthy of this level of intimacy and to stop shaming myself. And so, there were times, it's like, no, turn the lights off, sir. Turn them off. No, we are not. No. And that was a whole season of my life where I couldn't really enjoy it because I didn't love me. and I was at war with my body. So when I talk about a head, so let alone the dirty clothes, and it was like, I don't even like me, don't necessarily want you to touch me. And it's like, okay, here are the safe zones where you can touch that won't make me cringe and make me self-conscious. And so it's sex is such an ordeal for women if we're dealing with body dysmorphia, if we're dealing with body issues. It can be a whole thing. It can be then just for you turning over your body to your partner, "Here, do whatever it is you need to do, and then let's be done, and I can go back and clean the kitchen."
Yeah. And again, like my invitation with intimacy is to play with it, right? It's not that your partner's doing to you, right?
Mhm.
It's a reciprocity of giving and receiving, right? It's a sharing. It's what do you want to play today?
Yeah, and a health that's when everything is healthy.
Yeah.
So when it's healthy, it can be this beautiful thing of play and reciprocity. But if you are at war with yourself, then you don't get that reciprocity. There is no element of play when you're at war internally. And for lots of years, I was at war internally.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your story. I know that you're not the only person, and
Oh, no.
I know that you're supporting many people right now who are listening to this. And
Hey, everybody.
yeah, hey, let's be real. The truth is, um, many people are having sex with the lights off, and many people are having sex done to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you and I, we've had this conversation over at This Woman Knows, but this whole idea of pleasure and how it is a bad word and that we are not supposed to experience this. It is not as you can have joy. Joy is good because we talked about this from our faith perspectives. It was like
Right.
joy is permissible, pleasure, and it's like, okay, now what are you getting into? Because that P word is kind of, that's off telling. And we have to, and do you understand the amount of healing that has to happen for you to say that I am okay with experiencing, with receiving, with giving pleasure?
Yeah.
There there's some deconstruction that has to happen. There's so much that has to happen for us. And pleasure isn't always about those sexual or intimate moments. It can be just about being very present and enjoying your food and taking in all the smells and the textures. Pleasure isn't always about the sexual part, and that's a very good part of it. We're not going to deny that, but you can have a pleasure-filled life, but it takes being very present. It takes a level of healing that a lot of us maybe haven't started our healing journeys, or we may be, in the middle, but it is our right to experience such. And
Yeah.
my hope is that we begin to unpack so that we can, especially now. Wouldn't that be such a beautiful sign of resistance? Is to be experiencing pleasure in this current moment that we all find ourselves in. And I think the rest is really irritating to some because a lot of Black women have gone, it's our time to rest now.
Yeah. Oh, right. You're getting into your article.
Mhm.
Let's talk about that.
Uh, so there was 2. So there was rest as resistance, and then the other one on about forgiveness. Yes, I okay, thank you, LinkedIn user. Absolutely, absolutely. So, I talked about my mama in this in one of the articles about how I never saw her rest. Mama was always doing, and her being of a generation, there were you didn't get a chance to rest. Rest wasn't really an option. And then she was a woman of faith as well. And so, there was things to do for the church. She had to work. She was a single mother raising two daughters. And we lived literally maybe 15 minutes from the beach and never went as a family. We never went to the beach.
Wow.
Never.
Well, okay. Couple of things. So I have a question about that because
Yes.
at that time, was it okay for us to go to the beach?
Yes. We
Okay.
were we were good. So this would have been the 80s,
Oh,
70s, 80s, 80s, because I got married in 87. So the 80s, when we were teenagers or kiddos, 70s, 80s, we never went. I don't have much memory of, we didn't do family vacations. It was work, church, school, work, wash, rinse, repeat. There
yeah.
were occasions. I do remember some occasions where joy kind of came in. The time my dad took my sister and I to go see The Wiz, that movie scared me. I'm still traumatized by certain scenes of that movie to this day. I digress. I do remember, and he took us to Hollywood to go see the Palladium, I think it is. I can't even remember, but I do remember that. I do remember my mom taking us to go see the Muppet movie. We
Mhm.
went to the drive-in. So I do remember these very small pockets of rest, of pleasure introduced. They were far and few and in between, right? So they weren't normal. That's why I can remember, because they weren't normal parts of our day, of our existence.
So you were not raised to rest. That was considered lazy, right?
Girl, no. No, ma'am. No,
Yeah.
ma'am. No. No. No, no, Cordelia. No.
You're like,
No.
absolutely not.
No. That is, and to this day, I still struggle with the idea of rest. So you heard me say yesterday was this
Yeah.
beautiful day, and so it is early, right? We're up early, and I've been up since maybe about 4:30 a.m. Central Time. I will go to work. Um, Somewhere around 2ish, my body's going, we want to lay down now. It's time for a nap. We've been up a very long time and we've been doing all the things, right? And it is hard for me to lay down and take a nap because I feel it's like, okay, and I work from home, so it's like, but we need to do this, do this, do this, do this. And to lay down and take a nap, it's difficult. It is the hardest thing in the world to lay down on the sofa and shut my eyeballs for a good 15, 20 minutes because
Well,
there are other things to do.
I know that's so common. It's funny because as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about my childhood. I'm like, what example did my mother set, right?
Mm,
So my life was different. And as a child, I was embarrassed about this. But now that I'm an adult, I'm
mm,
really actually pleased. So I'm the youngest, right? And my mom was actually ill when I was, growing up. And so she rested quite a bit, you
mm.
know? And, my father was retired because he was, like, 61 when I was born.
Oh,
Yeah, so, yeah, I saw a lot of rest, I saw a lot of reading. I took
mm,
long walks with my dad. He'd walk, like, 10, 20 miles a day, and he was really, like, food, nutrition was very important. So, he raised us to eat a certain way. My mom had a kitchen garden, you know what I mean? It's like rest, relaxation, sun, taking walk, like, that was my life,
wow. That
you
is so
know?
ideal.
And, but it was very important to take time and contemplate, and my dad,
Mm,
he was like, "We're the original philosophers, but you have to give your mind time to, synchronize the thoughts," You observe, you read, you record, and so I I'm kinda chill because I was raised kinda chill, you know? Um, and the part that I was embarrassed about was, my mom was sick, so she,
Mm,
was a little bit weaker and obviously a lot older than everybody else's mom, but it was because of that, that self-nurturing is so important to me
mm,
and, taking care of my body and being present with my body because that really prolonged her life,
yeah,
she was on dialysis, and back then people died,
yeah.
but she was on dialysis for 21 years.
That's
Unheard
unheard of.
Yes. Like, even still, that's unheard of.
That's unheard of.
Yeah, but, many things going on there, and maybe in another episode, I'll expound a little bit, but the
Wow.
main thing is, it's because of seeing the way she lived, right, that I chose to live this way, and that's why I always talk about self-nurturing,
Mm,
and my mom and dad, like I said, they were older, so they did a lot of resting, and I observed a lot of intimacy between them. So, again, like all the things I talk about, it's just like it's what I grew up seeing,
mm.
and I know it's possible, even as a Black person,
It is. It is. It is. And so if we're talking about what we learned from our mothers, I I saw rest embodied in my grandmother. She was
Mm.
retired, and I spent a lot of time with her. And so I saw her rest. I saw her nurture lifelong friendships. I saw her take vacations. I saw her, and as a daughter born out of the Jim Crow South, my grandmother was born 1912, 13, and endure everything that she endured and lived on purpose. Um, I saw my grandmother go back to school in her 40s, 50s to become a nurse because that was what she believed. And it was very true that she was put here to heal. Um, so I watched this amazing woman. I watched her rest. I watched her lean into her friendships with her girlfriends. Um, I watched her manage life as a single Black woman because she was very independent. She would always tell me, and it's like, "You don't need a man," and it was like, "Have your own stuff." And I would think my grandmother was, it's like, "Why is she hating on men?" But there was some lived experience that I understood later in life, and it's like, "Ah, I get it." So if Nana embodied like living her best, like coming out of what she came out of to then live her best life was eye-opening for me, and then to watch my mom, who just worked all the time, she embodied busyness and having to do, and so I kind of took on that mantle of busyness and just always doing and never fully resting. And so my mom would run herself ragged. I saw that in myself. I would have people tell me all the time, it's like, you need to slow down. And it's like, but there's things to do. And especially after my mom she died of 12, she had 12 strokes. They happened in sets of threes. And I was her caregiver. And so I watched my mom. I watched this woman who had so much to give, who wanted to do so much. And those last set of strokes, I saw the anger and the frustration in my mom because she was no longer able to do. And I believe that mama had to come to peace with that this was really it, because she didn't pass immediately, and there was this very just hard exterior in my mom that I had never seen before, and I told my husband, I said, "This woman is pissed." It's like this woman is pissed, and, she passed away about 3 months later, but what that did for me and my mom was young, my mom was 65 when she passed. That's young.
My mom was too.
Okay, so I felt 1, I felt cheated, and then 2, I felt, "Okay, could this be me?" And so it kind of ramped up this, "Okay, do all the things, not lean into rest. It did no, that was that was not the assumption I immediately made. It
Hmm.
was run hard, run fast because I could end up like my mama. I could, my body could betray me. But I had already made some choices about my health. I had already dropped like almost 100 pounds. I had changed my eating. I've always worked out because they told me that's what you needed to do to lose the weight. So I've
Right.
always been active all my life, despite what what I looked like. I would run and all the things, right? So I enjoy being outdoors in nature and walking and riding my bike. And I had to tell myself, as much as I loved my mama, it's like, I'm not my mama.
That's right.
And so now I'm leaning into my Nana Brown like kind of life, feeding my relationships with my friends and taking trips and just I am choosing to yes do the things, walk in my purpose, but I'm also leaning into rest like my Nana taught me.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that, we have a choice. All these years, you had a choice. You had the example of your mother, you had the example of your grandmother, you know, and you it took you a while, and now you're here, you
And
know?
and so to women who are of my in my age range, so 55-ish, 50-ish or so, and then you think it's like, well, how much so there are probably we don't know how many summers we have left. We've got a good number behind us, right? And we don't know how many we have ahead of us. And that can be a scary thing. If we're honest, it's like, okay, I'm really not 20 anymore. I'm really not 30 anymore. And it's like my body is not this is she's changed since what I remember. There are some obviously some things that are happening. I don't like a lot of it, but it's this change that has to, that's happening. And so, our friend Kim Beatty, she has this whole community about what it is to be a perimenopausal woman and coming into this time of our life. And, she has this beautiful thing, you're coming, when you talk about our phases of our cycles and how we are coming into our power, we're experiencing our power. And then in this phase of our life, we are the power, right? And
Yeah.
so I just thought that was really beautiful. But it takes some get this adjustment, realizing that it's like, okay, I'm not 20, but I'm not 90 either. It's like, really, how much time do I have ahead of me? And you feel like it's too late. And it's like, why start? Why even bother? Why I'm too old? And I'm going, that's not true. I had a beautiful woman. She was in her 80s when she told me this. And I told her, it's like, I had this realization and came to understood this. And it's like, I wish I would have come to this wisdom earlier. I wish I would have gotten it in my 30s versus getting it now in my late 40s. And she said, Lisa, she says, there are women in their 70s who still do not have the understanding that you just mentioned, have not been enlightened in this way and don't have this understanding. And so it doesn't matter when you get it. What matters is that you get it. And when
Yes.
you do get the understanding is that you move forward with it. So it's not too late. I am working on my first feature film. I'm a 55-year-old woman working on my first feature. I have restarted and relaunched businesses because that girl, that's a whole different that's a different conversation. But
Yeah.
it's like that's I'm gonna save that one. But it does do it. Just do it.
I wanna, share this woman knows. It's,
Oh, thank you.
this woman knows. Look, I'm trying to get the URL real quick. Yeah, so people can, connect with you.
Would love to have you guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
And you'll see our evolution. So I when Cordelia said that it's like it's been 10 years, and it's like, oh snap, it has been 10 years, hasn't it?
Mhm.
And so if you go to This Woman Knows You'll see writings from Cordelia. She looks a lot different in those early pictures from 10 years ago.
Yes.
My writing has evolved, but it's all there. So it's like this snapshot, and you get to see our growth and our evolution because wait a minute, all of it is still there. I have not removed a thing. So it's like it's all there, and you get to see our evolution. And some of a lot of the writing is evergreen, meaning that it is still valuable. It's there's still meaning in it, and you can still glean from the truths for that particular moment. And so I am grateful that I left it all. It is all still there.
Yeah, it's so important to, like, not give up on whatever it is that you're doing, you know? And whatever you do, just keep doing it, you know?
Absolutely. My new thing is touch it every day, or
Mm,
however you want to. It's like touch it every week, touch it every day, so that you don't lose that momentum. And so for me, so much of my life has been as an entrepreneur. My entrepreneurial journey has not been easy, and it's not for a lot of people. And I started my business originally out of necessity. It was about 2008. I had just changed jobs, and I was working for a home builder. Well, if you know anything about 2008, that was the great mortgage crash. And
yeah.
so I found myself without a job, and I did not have my degree at the time. If you also remember anything about that era, now you needed a 4-year degree to be an administrative assistant because so many people were out of work, and I didn't have my degree. So I leaned into what I knew, and so I had this certain skill set, and it's like, okay, I've got to start a business. And so for a lot of years, it was hunt, eat, hunt, eat, hunt, eat. And so you don't have the luxury of this like stable income so that you can build properly, so that you can touch things every day. It was, what do I have to do today to send out an invoice, to get that invoice paid? That was that was real
That
for me.
that's what I'm hearing. What I so I did a couple of episodes ago, I called it "Graduating from Trauma Drive," right? So I resonate with that also. Like, when I started my business, this business, I was in trauma drive, you know, I was still married. It wasn't a great situation. And I wanted to, you know, afford to leave. And
Yeah,
so, um, and now we're all these years later, you know, in both our cases, and we've graduated to Joy Drive, I would say, you know,
yeah,
and, um, and now we get to talk about what people miss because now we are slowed down enough to see what we were missing, right?
absolutely,
Because we're not in
absolutely.
the doing anymore. Like, what we've been talking about, I would say, is like when you're in your doing like that, you're in that trauma drive.
Mhm.
But what you described your Sunday was like where you're luxuriating and just being in your body and being in your, you know, enjoying your house that's so beautiful and clean. How about that, right?
Mhm.
And, now you get to be in Joy Drive. So, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it. I could have done another episode by myself, but, you know, since we were in our morning chat, I was like, "Hey, what you doing?"
It's like, wait a minute, I'm up, technically I'm up, and so it's like, "Yeah, okay, sure, let's do this. Why not?"
See, I love that I have women like you know, to support me, in my network, and who are
Mm.
so dynamic that you can give value just, like, rolling out of bed. So that's Lisa N. Alexander of This Woman Knows, and maybe she'll join us again next week since I'm doing a mini marathon of brilliant Black women, so you get to see more of her brilliance.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sure. As long as it can be this time, because you did hear me say that I do. So part of my entrepreneurship is like, yes, I'm working a 9 to 5, so we're doing both. But absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you everyone who came here to listen to What People Miss. And remember that life is lived in the space between the notes, right?
Mm.
In the silent moments, It's you have choices with what you can do with the words in your mind. And so I invite you to look at the world from a place of choice, not a place of what's being done to you, but everything's happening for you.
Mm.
You're always winning. Don't miss that. And I'll see you next time.